The sun had just begun to rise, casting a golden hue over the sleepy little town that time seemed to have forgotten. Cracked sidewalks stretched past faded storefronts, and weeds crept up the sides of once-proud buildings. The air was still, as if even the wind had given up on this place. A rusted monument stood in the center of the deserted square, its plaque barely legible, worn down by years of neglect and silence. Birds perched atop it, undisturbed, as if claiming the relic as their own. No one paused to notice it anymore. People passed by without a glance, their eyes fixed on the ground, their minds heavy with daily worries. But not her asterisk, Nadia. A 35-year-old woman with quiet eyes and a calm presence walked slowly into the square, her boots crunching against the gravel. Her coat was worn at the cuffs, speckled with dried paint, a sign of hands that worked more than they rested. As she approached the monument, something made her stop. Maybe it was the way the morning light hit the metal. Maybe it was a memory buried deep inside her. She stepped closer, raising her hand gently and running her fingers across the corroded surface. It was cold and rough, but it stirred something warm in her chest. The plaque's letters were barely there, almost erased by time, but Nadia whispered them aloud, filling in what was missing from memory. Her grandfather used to bring her here when she was a little girl. He'd tell her stories about the town's heroes, the people who built this place from the ground up. She remembered his voice. She remembered the pride. Asterisk. Now that pride had vanished. The town had grown quiet, forgotten, its stories fading like old photographs. Nadia's eyes welled slightly, not from sadness, but from a quiet fire rekindling within her. She looked around empty benches, peeling paint, crumbling edges, and saw more than decay. She saw possibility. She saw a story waiting to be retold. No one else was stopping. No one else was remembering. But she would. She stepped back from the monument and nodded slightly to herself. Her mind was already racing, ideas taking shape. It wouldn't be easy. It would take time. But she had time. She had vision. And more importantly, she had heart. The relic didn't deserve to be forgotten. Neither did this town. She turned and walked away, her steps slow but certain. Something had begun. Asterisk, the soft hum of a single desk lamp lit up the dim garage, now transformed into a makeshift workshop filled with scattered tools, worn brushes, and relics layered in dust. Nadia stood at the center of it all, her hair tied, messily back, sleeves rolled high, and a faint smudge of rust across her cheek. She bent over a heavy slab of stone and Old Town plaque she had pulled from behind the library, half buried in dirt and ivy. Carefully, she scraped away years of grime, each motion slow, intentional, respectful. All around her were forgotten treasures, a shattered mosaic once displayed in the city hall, pieces of wrought iron from a collapsed garden gate, and the cracked face of an antique clock. Asterisk on the walls, Nadia had pinned sketches, recreations of how things once looked. Faded photographs, handwritten notes, and pages from history books were arranged like puzzle pieces, each offering a clue to the town's past. She worked late into the night, her hands steady, eyes focused, ears filled with the faint sound of classical music drifting from an old radio. No one had asked her to do this. No one even knew she was doing it. But that didn't matter. Asterisk, as she wiped clean the plaque's surface, delicate letters began to reveal themselves, one by one, emerging like ghosts from the metal. A small smile tugged at her lips. It was working. It was possible, and it was beautiful. This place, this town, these relics, they still had something left to say, and she would be the one to help them speak again. A calm afternoon hung over the town square, the air filled with a stillness that had become all too familiar. Shops remained quiet, benches empty, and the towering bell structure stood silent, its voice long forgotten. But today, something stirred. From the far end of the square, wheels scraped against the cobblestone as Nadia pushed a tall metal cart. With care, draped in cloth and bound with ropes, was the fully restored town bell, polished to a soft golden glow. Its once broken frame now gleaming with purpose. Asterisk people glanced curiously from windows and doorways, whispering among themselves. As they saw her maneuver the bell into place, she moved with silent determination, tightening bolts, securing chains, and guiding the hoist rope through the ancient pulley. No one offered to help, no one needed to. It was as if something sacred was unfolding, and interrupting it would be a kind of betrayal. Asterisk with a final pull, the bell rose inch by inch, climbing its way back to the top of the tower. The sun hit it just right, setting its curves aglow. Then, with a deep breath, Nadia pulled the cord. A powerful chime rang out. Across the square, rich, pure, unforgettable. Children froze. Elders blinked back tears. Shopkeepers stepped outside, stunned. Asterisk, that sound hadn't echoed in decades, and now it rang again strong, clear, alive. Nadia didn't wave or smile. She simply looked up at the bell, her eyes soft, and then walked away, toward her next forgotten relic. Behind her, a town slowly began to remember. Asterisk, asterisk, the old train station had long lost its rhythm. Cracked tiles, broken benches, and graffiti-smeared walls stood as faded echoes of the life that once pulsed through it. But today, that silence was interrupted by the soft creak of wood and the careful movements of a woman with vision in her eyes. Nadia, wearing overalls and gloves, gently pulled the cover off a beautifully restored wooden bench, its surface smooth, its original floral carvings lovingly brought back to life. The wood shone in the sunlight. Now glowing with a reborn mural, Nadia had spent nights tracing outlines by flashlight, matching faded colors from old photos, restoring each stroke with patience. It was a vibrant painting of the first train that had ever stopped here, surrounded by smiling townsfolk from decades ago. She had brought color back to what had become invisible. Asterisk slowly, townspeople drifted in. An elderly couple gasped softly, recognizing themselves in the mural from when they were newlyweds. A little boy ran his fingers along the bench, amazed by its smooth polish. For the first time in years, people didn't just pass through the station. They stopped. They sat. They talked. Asterisk and Nadia, standing quietly by the corner, watched with a soft, satisfied smile. Her work wasn't just restoration. It was resurrection. Asterisk, the air buzzed with gentle excitement as townspeople filled the newly revived square, their voices a mix of wonder and gratitude. Children ran near the fountain that now sparkled again, while elders traced the contours of restored plaques and statues, marveling at details they hadn't seen in decades. Nadia stood quietly near the back, hands clasped in front of her paint-streaked jeans, eyes scanning the crowd with quiet disbelief. She hadn't asked for this gathering, but the town had called her anyway, brought together by something she never expected would matter this much, now standing proud, polished, and surrounded by fresh flowers. Asterisk, the mayor took the microphone and cleared his throat. There was a time when we thought the soul of our town was fading, he began. The stories were buried, the history forgotten, until one woman, quietly and without applause, decided to bring it all back piece by piece. The crowd turned toward Nadia, and she froze, eyes wide, as a wave of clapping grew into a standing ovation. Faces young and old beamed at her. A child held up a handmade sign that read, "Thank you, Miss Nadia." Asterisk, a local historian stepped forward, his voice trembling with emotion. "You didn't just fix old things, you restored who we are. You brought back our memories." Tears welled up in a few eyes. For a moment, it felt like the whole town had taken a collective breath, had finally exhaled years of silence, grief, and distance. She didn't have a speech, just a quiet voice that carried more than words ever could. "I didn't plan this," she said softly. "I just remembered how much this town meant to me, and I didn't want it to disappear." Her voice broke slightly, and the audience leaned in closer, connected by something beyond appreciation. It was a rediscovery of pride. Asterisk behind her. The newly restored bell chimed once again, this time joined by the soft sound of the train horn echoing from the revived station. The past was no longer forgotten. It was alive, honored. She spoke softly of shared heritage, urging everyone to guard these revived treasures. The mayor handed her a small key to the city. She blushed, accepting only on behalf of every forgotten craftsperson whose work she'd uncovered. As the sun dipped, the restored bell chimed again, echoing promise. Lanterns flickered on, illuminating neighbors laughing like old friends. A violin melody rose, lifting hopes. Asterisk.